Coming up, State of Business, sponsored by
ඔබගේ ආදරණීය වාහනය ආදරෙන් සුරකින්න ඉකු ටැබ්ලට්ස් භාවිතා කරන්න.
බාධා නැති සීමා නැති SLT Mobitel Home 4G දැන් පුළුල් ආවරණයක් සමග.
IWS Aviation.
A very good evening and a very warm welcome to State of Business on Art Television. I'm Savindri Jayawardena. Let's look at the top stories for the day. Chinese Defense Minister concludes bilateral discussions with Sri Lankan President. Sri Lanka surpasses $1 billion exports in March, EDB reveals. News in detail. Chinese State Councillor and Defence Minister General Wang Feng called on President Gotabaya Rajapaksa for a bilateral discussion at the Presidential Secretariat in Colombo this morning. The Chinese Defence Minister is in Sri Lanka on a two-day official visit. The Chinese Defence Minister had arrived in Sri Lanka last night on a two-day official visit. General Wang Feng was received by a Sri Lankan defence delegation led by Defence Ministry Secretary Kamal Gunratne at the Bandanaki International Airport upon arrival in the island last night. The visiting Chinese delegation arrived in a special aircraft and was welcomed in keeping with Sri Lankan traditions at the BIA. Government sources also announced that the visit and the reception had been organized in accordance with the healthcare guidelines and air bubble concept to prevent the spread of coronavirus. The Chinese Defence Minister was received by the Secretary to the President P.B. Jayasundara and Foreign Secretary Admiral Professor Jainath Colombage upon arriving at the Presidential Secretariat this morning. General Wang Feng had told the foreign media that the bilateral talks between the Sri Lankan president and himself would be very fruitful and that relations between the two countries would be further strengthened with this visit. The high-ranking Chinese official was also met Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa for a discussion, and the Chinese delegation will be leaving the country tomorrow morning. According to a statement issued by the Export Development Board, Sri Lanka reached $1 billion in exports in March this year after a 6-month hiatus. Export Development Board Chairman Suresh Dhimal expressed his view, saying that even with the current pandemic situation around the world, Sri Lanka's exports are on the rise. According to customs figures, earnings from merchandise exports increased by 62.47% year-on-year in March 2021. Earnings from merchandise exports surged 11.51% to $2,954.53 million in the first quarter of 2021 relative to the same period in the previous year. Earnings from major commodity segments such as apparel, tea, rubber-based products, coconut-based products, spices, and electrical and electronic components surged both in March 2021 and during the first quarter of 2021 relative to the previous year. Both tea export earnings and production increased by 99.33% and 86.69% year-on-year in March 2021 respectively. Tea exports amount to $124.61 million, accounting for 12% of total merchandise exports. The first 3 months of comparison show a 25.2% rise. The higher result is attributed to increased demand from the UAE, China, and Libyan markets. Earnings from all major categories of coconut-based goods rose by 109.57% in March 2021 as compared to March 2020, owing to better results in the export of coconut oil, liquid coconut milk, cocoa peat, and activated carbon. The United States of America's single largest export destination reported $715.4 million in exports in the first quarter of 2021, a 0.94% improvement from the $708.76 million recorded in the first quarter of 2020. EDB estimates that services exports, which include construction, financial services, and transport and logistics, will total $1,194.3 million in the first quarter of 2021, up from $993 million in the same time frame in 2020. In the meantime, Cabinet spokesman and Media Minister Kehelia Rambukwala told the weekly Cabinet briefing yesterday that the Cabinet has approved the proposal to establish a National Debt Security Centre for SMEs. The new credit guarantee scheme, which will be administered by the Finance Ministry, is intended to support small businesses in pandemic recovery. Cabinet spokesman Minister Rambukwala stated that the new credit guarantee scheme would cover all financial institutions regulated by the central bank. According to the minister, despite the government's support, small business continue to fail to secure loans in order to sustain COVID-19 or expand their activities. As a result, the government has agreed to launch a new credit guarantee system in which the burden will be assumed by the state. Concurring the data published by the central bank earlier this year, moratoriums enacted by the government and the monetary authority to curb COVID-19's influence last year failed to hit a large number of small enterprises. The central bank has consistently urged banks to lend more to small businesses and has said that lending goals for particular industries will be established. The Monetary Board agreed in June 2020 to introduce a credit guarantee and interest subsidy scheme to help banks speed up loans to companies impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. The central bank issued a credit guarantee to banks under this program, varying from 80% for smaller loans to 50% for comparatively large loans, allowing banks to grant loans to the affected businesses' working capital needs. Stay tuned for more news right after this break.
This is one way of showing convenience, and MySLT is just another name for convenience. Services here, there, and everywhere. Now brought onto MySLT. Access all of SLT Mobitel services through one app. SLT Mobitel, the connection.
ටෙක්ස්ටෝරියම් අංකානෝනාවය කිලින් වීදිය කුළඹිකුළා.
Welcome back after the break. Leftist party Janata Vimukti Peramuna today charged the government that it has neglected the COVID-19 pandemic, putting the general public in trouble. Addressing a media briefing in Colombo, JVP Politburo member Vujitha Herath said that the reduction of the COVID-19 cases in the country during last few weeks was due to the unavailability of enough PCR tests.
ඊයේ තමයි ලංකාවේ වැඩිම කොරෝනා රෝගීන් හඳුනාගත්ත දිනේ. වැඩිම කොරෝනා රෝගීන් ප්‍රමාණයක් වාර්තා වුණේ ඊයේ දවස තුල. ඇත්තටම මේ කොරෝනා රෝගීන් වැඩිවීම ගත්තොත් ඒ වැඩිවීම පෙන්눔 කරන්නේ PCR පරීක්ෂණ ප්‍රමාණය වැඩි කිරීමට සාපේක්ෂව. පහුගිය කාලය පුරාවටම ආණ්ඩුව මේ PCR පරීක්ෂණ ප්‍රමාණය අඩු කරා නොකරනම තත්ත්වයට ගෙනාවා. PCR පරීක්ෂණ අඩු කරනකොට රෝගීන් ප්‍රමාණයත් අඩු වෙලා තමයි පෙන්눔 වුණේ. නැවත ඊයේ පෙරේදා PCR පරීක්ෂණ දවසකට 15000ක් කරන්න ආණ්ඩුව තීරණය කරා. ඒ ප්‍රමාණයටම තවමත් කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ වෙනකොට තමයි රට පුරාම ගම්මට්ටමින් පවා වැඩිපුර රෝගීන් ප්‍රමාණයක් හඳුනා ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. ඉතින් අද වෙනකොට තත්ත්වය ඉතාම භයානකයි. දවසකට මරණ ප්‍රමාණය පවා එන්න වැඩි වෙමින් තියෙනවා.
In the meantime, Cabinet spokesman Kehelia Rambukwala admitted that the government should have enforced strict travel and other COVID-19 related restrictions during the New Year season. Addressing the weekly Cabinet briefing yesterday, Minister stated that strong COVID-19 restrictions would be imposed in the coming days. In response to a journalist's query, Minister Rambukal admitted that stern controls should have been enforced ahead of the New Year holidays, but claimed that the government had put trust in people to follow social distancing guidelines. Minister insisted that the government was taking all possible measures against the new variant, which health officials have said could spread more quickly. Despite this, the minister declined to include details on the number of new ICU beds or proposal to increase oxygen supply. Further, Minister Rambukal dismissed fears of a virus spreading through public transportation, claiming that steps have been taken to minimize the number of public sector workers. In a reply to a journalist, the minister denied charges that Indian nationals are not subjected to quarantine after arriving in Sri Lanka.
සීමාවන් වලින් එළියට යනවා නම් අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම අපට නීති ගේන්න වෙනවා. පහුගිය කාලේ අපි එහෙම නීති ගෙනාවා. එවැනි නීති නැවත ගෙනන්න වෙනවා. මේ වෙනකොටත් අපි මංගල උත්සව සීමාවන් පත් කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒක තව තරමක් අඩු කරන්න සහ බීම සම්බන්ධව තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න සම්බන්ධව අපිට සාකච්ඡා කරන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා. හැබැයි මේ සියල්ල අපි එකට මේ මොහොතේ සාකච්ඡා කරමින් කටයුතු කරන ආකාරය ගැන කතා කරනවා. නැවත වරක් මම ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා ජනතාවගෙන් මේට පූර්ණ සහයෝගය ලබා දෙන්න. ඔබ ආරක්ෂා වෙන්න. ඔබ ආරක්ෂා වුණොත් රටම ආරක්ෂා වෙනවා.
In the meantime, Tourism Minister Prasanna Ranatunga announces that the ministry would spend over 519 million rupees in tourism growth projects this year. Minister made these remarks during a discussion held yesterday to look into the progress of development projects being carried out by the Ministry of Tourism. Tourism Minister Prasanna Ranatunga emphasized the importance of safeguarding tourist attractions while improving infrastructure in tourist zones. Minister Ranatunga has urged officials to pay particular attention to this when implementing the Ministry of Tourism's annual growth strategy. A total of 100 million rupees has been set aside for the renovation of ancient Dutch forts, with another 37 million rupees set aside for the development of existing tourist attractions. A total of 265 million rupees has also been set aside for the construction of 30 intermediate houses near the Mother Church in Mannar, which is a joint project between Sri Lanka and India. Accordingly, 45 million rupees have been set aside by the ministry for the growth of human capital in the tourism sector. Officials reported that this initiative training of those engaged in the field of tourism, covering all provinces of the island, is already underway. Construction of the approach route to Yalagalge, the weaving platform at Madhulsima Small World's End, and improvement of infrastructure services for visitors visiting Bopat Alla are among the development projects currently underway. According to the Ministry of Tourism, 7 tourist villages have been developed as part of the community-based tourist village initiative. The launch of 7 new websites related to these tourist villages has been planned. Minister Prasanna Ranatunga expressed his views, emphasizing the importance of the Ministry of Tourism and the Tourism Development Authority working together to improve tourism in Sri Lanka. Stay tuned for talk updates right after this break.
This is one way of showing convenience, and My SLT is just another name for convenience. Services here, there, and everywhere. Now brought onto My SLT. Access all of SLT Mobitel services through one app. SLT Mobitel, the connection.
විශේෂ අවශ්‍යතා සහ සුවිශේෂී දක්ෂතා ඇති උපකාර අත්‍යවශ්‍ය දරුවන්ට මුළු මහත් රටක දිරිය දෙමින් ඔවුන්ගේ වාසනාවට හේතුවක් වෙන එකම ලොතරැයිය.
දරු දිරි සම්පත හේතු වාසනා වේවා.
Welcome back after the break. Trading at Colombo Stock Exchange ended on a positive note today. The all-share price index gained 173.24 points to close at 7,239.94, and the S&P SL20 gained 76.74 points to close at 2,878.80. The turnover was 2.1 billion rupees and 107 million shares were traded. Up next are Forex trades. And that's all news for today. See you tomorrow with State of Business at the usual time. Until then, take care and good night.